Pavement is a bilingual work. Today our anthology will be launched by two remarkable friends of ours, Ana Maria Beligan and Luke Carman. I met for the first time Luke Carman in 2010 during the launch of Zine West 10, Connect Studios, Parramatta. I think it was on the 9th of October. At that moment, Luke was a winner of the first prize, Zine West 10. Well, I was only the winner of third prize. In between that day and 25th of March 2017, Luke Carman became the author of An Elegant Young Man, Giramondo Publishing House, a book which was recently awarded the New South Wales Premier's Literary Award for New Writing. Luke Carman is the Associate Director of Sweatshop, and in 2014 was named a Sydney Morning Herald Best Young Novelist. Luke's story Liverpool Boys is included in the SBS podcast series True Stories, a podcast series of true stories from Australia's best emerging and early career writers. Luke, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you very much for inviting me to come and do this. I wasn't going to mention this, but I didn't realize we were in that competition against each other that year. What year? 2012? 2012 or something? Just quickly, because as I said, I wasn't going to mention this, but the first time I remember meeting Mihaela was at one of the Zine West writers groups that myself and Mohammed had been asked to come and talk at. Mohammed Ahmed, another Western Sydney writer. And we gave, we were sort of figuring things out ourselves, but maybe compensating for the fact that we were, quite young and inexperienced. We had a lot of bravado about the way we would do workshops, and maybe you could call it arrogance, I guess. But I remember Mihaela reading a poem, and then I immediately giving her feedback, what I thought of it, and so on and so on. And then afterwards, at the end of the group, you came up and you presented me with a copy of your latest anthology of poems, and it suddenly occurred to me that maybe I didn't know as much as I thought I did, and the poems were much better than anything that I could have come up with myself. And so ever since then, I've tried to be a lot more humble when I talk about other people's work, even though it doesn't necessarily come naturally to me. I want to say just quickly, I hope no one will be offended if I read from a prepared statement rather than being spontaneous. Greetings to everybody, especially those who have travelled today, and in particular to Your Excellency, if only because, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, it's so very rare that you get to say Your Excellency. I've never met anyone with that title before, so that's a thrill for me.
I'm a temporary excellency. You are permanent.
Oh my God! Well, is that official? Do you have the authority to do that? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Pounding the Pavement is a collection that is, to me, caught in a curious balance. It seems maybe like quite a few poetic anthologies, but it's caught between a solidity of a material world on the one hand, and a sort of transcendent phantasmagoria of light and dreams on the other. And the collection, Pounding the Pavement, takes its name from one of the later inclusions. It's a poem by Julian Wrightson, and it's called The Commuter. And it's perhaps the anthology's darkest, or at any rate its most dispiriting inclusion, with its images of monochromatic drones in a joyless toil. And the titular Pounding on the Pavement is actually a chorus of demoralized worker drones. And they're stepping with grinding footfalls on the already forgotten layer of dead dreams and disappointments. It's a grim image for what for many people maybe feels like a grim time. There's a nihilistic dread to it, I suppose, and you might be forgiven for being faced with that, to go searching in it for a gem of optimism. which I was. And I consoled myself by saying that the line, layer upon layer of forgotten dreams, at least suggested that even in the grim world of the commuter, new dreams were possible, because they were being generated, even if it was just to be crushed. It's a short poem, and it's a powerful one, and it sits beside the collection's longest English contribution, I think, which is a prose work by Chloe Higgins called She Hides Behind Words. And the apposition of these two works offers an interesting juxtaposition, and it's one that I suspect is central to understanding the whole of the collection. In Higgins Prose, we meet a girl who, in direct contrast with the weaponized droning in the previous work, finds herself beleaguered by a living world of dream words, and we're told that she hides behind words like most people behind walls, and she hides behind them, but she's likewise assailed by them. She's caught in this kind of dialectic civil war of words, and she's both the master and the Marguerite, and the words, like mischievous spirits, they pull themselves from the cups and cupboards, and they lay waist deep around the girl's body and bed, getting between lovers in the bed sheets, even as she pulls at their legs and plucks their wings. And in the end, like the dreams beneath the uncaring feet in Wrightson's poem, they end up with the girl's apparently lifeless body laying on top of them, with several sentences, as we heard from the ambassador's Dadaist poem, still trying to escape. Now, the vision that this offers is a prose one that almost ricochets off Wrightson's poem in terms of its imagery, because it provides an excess of words, an excess of dreams. It suggests that these things are overwhelming rather than forgotten, unnoticed, or dead. And I think that provides the unifying dilemma of the work as a whole. But this is a passionate infinitude of language that opens us all up to its mischievous potentials and burdens, and its imposed unrealities. And it contrasts with the often grim spectre of an eternal silence without language, which is the end of dreams, and the monoglot mute of an indifferent world of objects in their fields. And I see this theme established in the very first offering of the collection, which you can see, with the title I've already made mention of, which is taken from Wrightson's poem, and all that suggests. And it's directly contrast with the ethereal luminosity of and excuse me for the way I pronounce his name, but Luminita Cervenescu? Luminita Cervenescu? Is Luminita here? Oh, okay, all right, I can say what I like then. All right, okay, I'll back it off a bit. Okay, so Luminita's work, which I'm completely unqualified to talk about, knowing absolutely nothing outside of literature. She writes in her own introduction that the bringing of light, which she calls luminism, is her unifying theme. Her name, as she says, literally means little light, so it's no surprise that she sees that her work is all about the light. And the light that she brings to the collection is, as I say, an ethereal counterpoint to the worldly weight of the book's images and structures, broken into chapters such as the land, the art of structure, but it also shines through some of the more abstract titles, like the art of the image, ars poetica. But in either direction, her art gives the work a theme of enlightenment, literally a lightening up of the spirit which frames the work in this collection, and brings an otherworldly optimism to the powerful contrasts. Contrasts such as Peter Cartwright's contributions, where on one page, in Good Friday on the Corso, the poet sees the streets flooded by a stream of folk who, in their inane, frivolous desires for parking spots and ice creams and hot chips, almost like the bourgeois model of Wrightson's dream-killing automatons, is contrasted on the second page by a more tighter, minimalist protest of pure survival against a world of exterminators with their bombs and planes, ghettos and creeping vines and border walls. It's a light that shines through Pamela Gray's Autumn pens too, which is a vision without streets, without concrete, and perhaps without people. It's a world where poplars write gold on the paper sky, and one that's virtually alive, sitting next to Cervenescu's Autumn Sonata. And again in this collection, the images move between the sort of effervescent light and the inescapable principle of worldly weight, but perhaps it's no more strikingly put than in Adam Marsden's Piano, and I don't know if Adam is here, but it's a short poem, so I'm just going to read it. I hope you don't mind. So this is Piano. Is everything tense, hidden, deep within a shell? An opening finds light and air, and sight and strings can be heard when the anvil strikes, padding the octaves. And the dialectic between the light and the anvil, and the sort of questioning that the poem provides, it reminds me of an image, I hope you don't mind me indulging in this, that I had when I was very, very young, where I would dream of the feeling, or maybe it was a proto-dream, a pseudo-dream of sorts, but a feeling anyway that the universe was both infinitely immense and extremely, almost tenderly delicate. And it haunted me because I couldn't translate it. And to be cheap about it, that's the nature of art. It's an attempt to give shape to what we feel and think in ways that we cannot otherwise express, and yet can never hope to completely empty. So, in using the word translation, because that was the problem for me when I was young, and the feeling that I had, I'm alerted to the other dimension of the work that I haven't mentioned, which is central to it, and that's translation, obviously, even in its absence. Speaking only one language, my experience of this work was a limited one, but perhaps that's not the correct way to look at it. Perhaps there's something closer to an invitation for wonder in this collection, to wonder about what is present but untranslated. And the opening poem by Diane Secusa, it calls this what I take to be, what I'm trying to talk about now, it calls the cosmic alphabet. And I think of that as the language that shines in the shadows and valleys of our own limited languages. But that's probably a philosophical question, and it's not something I'm really equipped to talk about. So I'll just stick to what I suspect, and that's that the collection, by a mere fact of its existence, begs us to consider some alternative facts about the world we currently inhabit. First, perhaps to remember that poetry and poetic prose is always an unlikely event, and since we cannot convincingly say what and who it serves, it's tempting sometimes to forgo it altogether, or to imagine a world in which it's unnecessary. I think to bring people and languages of such grand antipodes as ours together for poetry's sake, and allow their differences just to sit side by side without borders or apologies, is an act of great faith in literature and the human spirit. And to the destroyers of dreams, and those whose planes and bombs fill the air in Peter Cartwright's visions, is such acts of faith can be seen, I think, convincingly as radical resistance. And so, for those of us who believe in art, these things are minor miracles. And I don't mean that in the sense of a supernatural intervention in the natural order, but more like a status that we can apply, a status of meaning that we can apply to things. In her introduction to Don Quixote, a novel about dreams in the daylight world, if you like, the translator Edith Grossman writes that all translation and all writing is an act of absurd optimism. And here in this collection, I think we've got a good reason to feel optimistic. Reading it gave me a great sense of gratitude, a swelling of the heart for all involved in its coming together, and how much more than the feeling to be part of its launch into its southern exposure. So to the writers, the facilitators and the readers, and lovers of language, thank you very much. And since it's customary when someone finishes talking to give an applause, especially when it's long-winded, I'd like us all please to direct our applause to all the writers involved, and in particular to the captain of the anthology, to Mihaela. So thank you. Oh my God.
It's Romanian wine. It's Romanian wine.
Oh,
Taste it.
thank you very much.